Welcome to the Trauma Informed Lens podcast. I'm your host, Matt Bennett. Each episode we talk about the research and practical aspects of the trauma informed movement. This podcast is not designed to replace mental health services. If you feel uncomfortable or triggered by our discussion, please consider seeking your own trauma treatment. In no way is seeking treatment an admission of weakness. It is a chance to build resiliency and experience post-traumatic growth. You can find show notes, resources, and more at traumainformedlens.org. Welcome to the Trauma Informed Lens podcast. I'm Matt. I just want to do a quick introduction for a third episode, crossover between the Heart Rate Variability podcast, on a really important topic. And we talk a little bit about HRV, but hopefully something that's relative to everybody as far as really assessing the health of your workforce as it comes back in, whether those are your teammates, whether you're a manager and leader, and wondering, what is the stress and trauma of the last 14 months done to your workforce. And to me, this is the critical question right now. And how do we really understand the health and wellness of our workforce? How do we know if our transitioning folks back to a potential new normal is working? And how does this all have an impact on our quality? So I wanted to do one more of these as a crossover show. I've got some great guests and some great interviews coming up in the next few weeks. So hope you enjoyed this last one with Jeff. We'll get back to more of the normal format starting next week. Thanks, everybody.
Hello, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of the Heart Rate Variability Podcast. Jeff Summers here with my partner, Matt Bennett.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Matt. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Hopefully, after last week's discussion, hopefully, hopefully you've seen some increase in your scores, but apparently that's not the case, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm going in the wrong direction. Last 2 days have been in the 20s. As I shared last time, I think my all-time average is right around 63. So I thought it was burnout. Did a whole show on burnout. With this, I know that that's part of this because I can tell you that I'm really exhausted. Doing a lot of training, needed that extra day off. But yeah, it was kind of depressing to see the scores just keep going down. So as we were talking, thinking about maybe getting a COVID test, I don't think my symptoms, because I am feeling ill, they're not really COVID. And my wife, being a first grade teacher, has started to bring home first grade germs, which were like non-existent.
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome back. Even when she went back in person, it's like, are you still wearing the mask, or why are these things coming home? I had a whole 12 months, not a whole lot to celebrate in the last year, except still being alive and still being alive on all different kinds of levels. But it was nice not to go. It was 12 months without a first grade illness coming home, and I might have a couple of those. So I don't know. It's like, like I said, we talk about like the N of one. Big question mark there. So I think if I'm down for a couple more days, I don't have anything leaving the house wise happening. So no real until I'm coming to your house on Saturday. So nothing really on the agenda until coming over you. So I'll keep track of my HRV and probably need to get a test at some point. But hoping that sleep, eating well, resting will do it. But it just kind of keeps going down. So I don't think my healthcare providers are in a place yet to say, hey, my HRV is crashing, I need your help. But maybe getting one of those drive-through tests or something like that sometime soon might not be a bad idea. So
yikes.
N of one.
That's right. We're going to make this podcast the Matt HRV Trend.
What is wrong with Matt? Diagnosing Matt through heart rate variability.
We've just come up with a new name. No, yes. But I thought, I think this is kind of relevant to the discussion today that we're going to continue. I know we sort of took a break a couple weeks ago. Yeah. We started talking about returning to the quote unquote new normal.
Yeah.
And how you can sort of use your HRV trends to, kind of help you through the process a little bit. And we talked really focused on individuals and,
Yeah.
going back to work and being back out in public, and
Yeah.
some folks not wearing masks, and all these restrictions being lifted, and all those kinds of things are happening, and that's a change for
Yeah.
people. And some people are better equipped or in a different place to handle it than others, and that's totally understandable.
Yeah.
But it also affects organizations as a whole, as
Yeah.
individuals make up teams and teams make up organizations. And so, as part two of that discussion, with a little break in between, I think today we'll focus on what this means to organizations' effectiveness, efficiency, output, just as a leader of an organization, how do you handle it?
Yeah.
Those kinds of topics I think are should be interesting to folks who are starting to welcome people back into the office and changing the way that people are doing work, regardless of what your profession is. It's changing again.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. And I've been working with a couple here locally, Mile High United Way, some folks in Nevada who are kind of statewide health care kind of continuum and training organization. Also, a few other organizations looking at it as well, because one of the things that, we touched a little bit of this from the individual perspective last time is, I really believe, and obviously my focus is on the healthcare, kind of helping and healing occupations, but really I think for most everybody, depending on what your industry is and what has happened in your industry, but really the last 13, 14 months now, I really believe posed one of the largest leadership management challenges in my lifetime. In fact, I couldn't think about something that came close to the last 14 months. I know I've been through, now I'm old, like, oh yeah, every 10 years we go through a recession. We had the Great Recession. Not
Right.
to minimize any of that, but my experience with the systems I've worked in is, those were big challenges. But you kind of within a month or so, for most of us, saw, okay, there's another side to this. And as we talked about with the individuals, Jeff, is 14 months now of living under an intense amount of stress. I use the word chronic trauma for that. Is we know scientific fact is when you're under a huge amount of stress for an extended period of time, it starts to do damage to your nervous system, to your immune system, to your, the cognitive, the prefrontal cortex. I think part of what I'm feeling, part of it, there may be other things going on, and who wants to spend an hour diagnosing me? We tried that last time and it didn't work. We're carrying around this exhaustion. So we're coming out. Just let's set this up. With HRV again being very simply managing our ability to handle or recovering from stress. So we've been under this load of stress for 14 months now. And as I always like to say, we've had COVID. COVID disrupted our homeostasis. Most of us were used to doing our jobs a certain way. Like that, we had to make significant adjustments. And there's going to be good that comes out of having to make those, but we didn't have time to run any kind of implementation science or quality improvement processes or setting up change in a way that we know really promotes change that improves outcomes. And so we got a whole lot of challenges, and then we've been under this. And so we've had the work, we've had the life challenges, having kids at home right next to you, trying to learn reading, writing, math, those sort of things. Just having a house that, may have not been populated. Now you're cramming 4 or 5 people in there all day, every day, those disruptions. And as we published this, we were talking before, there's just a lot of stirring up again of the focus on racial justice in our communities. Don't think if you're a supervisor, people aren't thinking about equity within the workplace. Have we had space for those important yet very intense conversations along the way as well? And again, here in the United States, at least, our politics have been absolutely nuts. So, we're now carrying all this. And as we get the vaccines out there, I think here in the United States, about the time we hit summertime, and I think probably, late June, which is technically summer, that's kind of probably going to get back to where Jeff and I may be able to go to a concert at Red Rocks or something like that. Maybe, hey, could we maybe get Nuggets playoff tickets?
Playoff game, absolutely.
Yeah, those things that were just like not on the radar, like, oh, okay. I mean, I get that second vaccine. I want to be healthy for everybody else still, but that's when I can kind of go back to living a fairly normal yet safe existence. So we've been through all this, and what I'm seeing, Jeff, and this is where I want to put this on leaders' radar, a vaccine does nothing for your mental health. Now, I say that with a little bit of acknowledgement that, hey, me going back to normal, me going to Red Rocks, me maybe seeing a Nuggets playoff game makes me happy. So sure. I'm not saying it has no impact, because being vaccinated does. However,
it relieves some stress too, right? Of getting sick.
Absolutely. But here's what I've been researching, talking about is, and again, to review this, is 14 months of this chronic stress creates a traumatic reaction in a lot of us. I'm not saying everybody. And this is what's walking in as a workforce, as a team, as an organization into this new normal. And what I think where I'm seeing leaders get stuck, because leaders, we are burned out as well. So we're like, oh God, I think we can get shots. Yeah, we can open the office back up. Hallelujah. Everything's back to normal.
Back to normal.
Nope. It's all that stress, whether it's around politics, racial justice, and if you're an international folks and not paying attention to our news, the trial for George Floyd's happening while we go through these national tragedies of shooting and, police violence against unarmed Black men. All this stuff is continuing, to happen in our country. So all this is walking back into that quote unquote new normal. So, we spent a good series, and I'd really encourage any leaders, managers to go back and listen to that, on the job demands and resource model as a way.
It's one of the most listened to podcasts that we've got. We've got a pretty solid following these days, and that series was one of the most popular.
Yeah, so get back there, because as we look at heart rate variability, it is time. It is, there's no time better than the present. I'm not trying to do a sales pitch for optimal HRV, but it's now. This is, how are you going to measure that? And that's got to be a key. And the great thing with the job demands and resource model, I love the Gallup 12 questions can fit, I think, the best measure of engagement and business history and connection to outcomes. So Gallup 12 can really measure your success with engaging your workforce. How do you know are your folks burned out? And that is where starting to get, especially if you're looking at transitioning, get the baselines, baselines of where your folks are at as soon as possible. And once you get those baselines, then you can measure the transition in. And even if you're just starting heart rate variability readings, look at those against population norms. One of the things we made sure that our dashboard does is leaders can log in and see how their organization, how specific teams are doing versus population norms. And that's going to give you some real good data on the health and wellness of your workforce, because you need to measure that as well. And there's other burnout surveys on that, but we're dealing with such unique times as to get information of, here's what we need to do every day. Here's how we're doing today. Here's how we're doing this week. And hopefully, as whatever new normal looks like, when we build a homeostasis or balance to what life looks like 6 months from now, we can measure our success. And like I said, I'm a big fan of Gallup 12, maybe doing that survey even every month. It's 12 questions. You can put it in a Survey Monkey, pretty easy to do that. But boy, those
Starbucks gift card
information are going to tell you, you're going to get the health of your workforce, your leadership strategies to build engagement. We know that those two things dramatically impact health outcomes. So I think this is the time where employee health and wellness is going to have an oversized result on the outcomes of our organizations, both in what we're trying to deliver, but also financially as well. And, Jeff, which leads my question to you is, what's going on in the business realm? What is going is anybody talking, like in the helping and healing environments? I'm doing my best to put this on people's radar, and successfully in some situations, but I love to hear, sort of in the tech world, in the folks you're talking to, what are you seeing on your side of the fence?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just now starting to really talk about large scale return to the office. A lot of plans to ease into that, depending upon your role, what you do, how much of being in the office is required for you, and everybody's different. Support staff going to be different than salespeople, different than, engineers, that kind of stuff. A lot of companies are doing the right thing and kind of polling employees and saying, hey, the first phase is going to be voluntary. Yeah. I mean, you've seen some, big tech companies that are just saying people can be remote forever if they want. We're not going to require any return to office. We're also seeing organizations divest a little bit from the large office, kind of home office hub where they've got thousands of employees into more of a regional model where they've got satellite offices that have a couple hundred. Which is sort of interesting. So, I think there's, in the tech world, I think there's a couple things going on. Obviously, number one, it's easier for people to be remote in a lot of ways. There's not a manufacturing plant where all the things happen at a location or something like that. We're not seeing a lot of customer engagement face to face. It's still all via Zoom. There isn't a lot of discussion around, when am I going to be, we've talked about it. When's my next airplane trip going to be for work? And I doubt it'll be before the end of the summer, to be honest with you. I mean, even though there's some voluntary return to work going on, nobody's talking about large in-office meetings, bringing vendors in, doing the old, dog and pony shows that you used to do. And those kinds of things aren't happening yet. Still all virtual. So it's in flux is probably the best one-word description of what's going on right now. And I think some people are probably good with that. But, just depending upon your situation, personality type, that just leads to a little bit more anxiety, I think, for other folks, because they see it's coming, but they don't know when, and they don't know what it means for them yet. So, I've been remote for a decade plus now. Pre-COVID, my work was remote anyway. So this hasn't been nearly as impactful for me. Same with you, but I know for a lot of folks who worked their entire careers in an office, this has been a huge shift, and I think a lot of people like it. And so now the idea of going back to the office is kind of like, wait a second, I don't mind my situation. But then there's other folks who, maybe you're single, you don't have this family support at home, probably itching for that interaction back in the office. Right. So it's a variety of emotion.
Yeah. And I think that's the real big thing. We look at that, again, that concept we talked about a few weeks ago of homeostasis, right? So we as human beings we're amazingly resilient. So we will survive things, but there's a very much different of being in survival mode and producing the best outcomes you can for your team, organization, those you serve, so on and so forth. So I think one of the real challenges that the leaders need to have on their radar is things are going to look different. And you did a great job, Jeff, of saying that's going to look different for a lot of different people. But I think everybody's life, even, as we transition, I know some manufacturer folks or folks working at the homeless shelter, those sort of things, they've been sort of doing it for a while. But as we transition, I think the bulk of our, to some new normal, even like with education, are we taking off the masks next year? Are we, I think California may be going back in person this week or something like that, or last week. So there's going to be these different levels of transition, but where I think leaders really need to focus is there's a lot of fear, anxiety about that for a variety of reasons. Maybe, I still don't know if my pants fit or not. I think they probably do, but, I'm too lazy to go underneath the sink to pull out the scale. So, I'm not sure. I'd like everybody on the podcast to think, yeah, I'm wearing my nice slacks on, but I'm not, So I haven't worn those in a long time. So it's like
That's
those
right.
things kind
And
of
you don't
come
miss
in.
them.
Yeah, all those little things coming together too. Commuting again for folks. Every time I don't know about you, Jeff. Every time I'm like, boy, it'd be nice to go into an office. I have a meeting around rush hour in Denver, and I'm like, I'm so glad I don't have to commute into an office. So it's all those little things. And the thing is, the message I want to kind of leave leaders with, and sort of the struggle is, you don't know. That's the thing. You do not know what your folks have been through these last 14 months. And, I've been very open and honest. I don't know what I'm going through right now. Am I just like going to the dark levels of burnout? I don't think so. What is going on with me? Do I need to go get a COVID test? What is these things? So we don't know what they've been through. And I just want to understate too, have you had racial equity talks in your workplace? If you're in the US, I don't keep track of news around the world because there's so much going on that I try to keep track of here. There's a lot of people that are really angry, really afraid, really hurt right now. Not just Black Lives Matter, but the violence against Asian Americans. Has your workplace had these conversations? And I think the answer for most is no, because we've been in survival mode. And that's not the best time to have really these intense conversations. So are you doing a good job with racial equity within your own house, so to speak? Like I said, politics might be walking back through the door as well. Just under 4 months ago, our nation's capital got taken over. So all these uncertainties, all this fear, we've been holding all of this. I believe for a lot of people, if I were to diagnose for chronic trauma, I'd probably find the majority of people coming out of this have experienced that. Does that mean everybody needs mental health therapy? Not necessarily. Do most of us could benefit from that to get us back to our best self at work? I think, yeah. I mean, maybe even talking to somebody just for an hour, maybe two. That may even be enough. So the investment in employee assistance programs. But as leaders out there, I'm challenging leaders, you need to access it yourself. I don't care what your mental health is when I say those words. I'm assuming, like most of us, the majority of leaders could use probably 6 sessions to walk through this, talking about how to support staff's mental health, those sort of things, easily could fill up 6 hours. But also you need to give a firsthand account of how folks access that, what that experience is like, and really sort of thinking through is, I hope in the job demands and resource, a series that we did, your staff's mental, emotional, physical health is research-based, proven over and over again to impact your outcomes. If you manage that well, you're going to have the capacity for engagement and improve your outcomes. If you don't, and like I said, the challenge is coming. It's been there to stay alive, be in that survival mode, but now that's walking back in. And if you don't handle it right, there are consequences to be had, both from the, whatever your outcomes are, but we all worry about our financial, our productivity, those sort of things transcend. And we know we probably got the unhealthiest workforce we've ever had right now walking back in, just due to the stress and strain that's been on us. We're going to go through another shift, likely in some ways for a lot of us. Just you and I, Jeff, we may be on an airplane sometime this year. Now, while I'm really excited about that, man, that just takes a lot of time, right? There's a whole another day I lose when I start to do this. So
that's right.
Again, while there's way more excitement than worry about that, it's also, right there. So again, this is going to be measured in turnover rates, in dropping productivity if we mismanage this. And how do you know the health and wellness of your workforce? And that's the challenge. You don't have to answer heart rate variability. There are potentially other things you could do to measure it, but can you track it in this way? And again, what Optimal gives you, less than $1 a day per employee. And again, I don't want to make this a sales pitch, but you just have to do something. If it's not heart rate variability, how are you going to know how many of your staff are burned out? How do you know who's going to need help? And so to leave with those questions, like I said, I'm excited that we can offer you an answer for that. But even if heart rate variability biometrics isn't, what is? And that's the question I want to leave leaders with is, what is? How are you going to know how well those job resources are doing to help your staff recover? Because that's where we're at right now. A lot of people are going to be in that recovery mode.
Yep, that's well said. I mean, and to your point, it's not only the right thing to do just from a human standpoint, but it's the right thing to do from a business standpoint.
Right.
And so, we got to, everybody, leaders are responsible for both. And the good news is this is an investment in both. And so that's, the win-win, so to speak. So
Absolutely.
Excellent, Matt. Well, every time we do this, we're a little bit closer to having more and more people vaccinated. I think we're getting close to over 50% here, and we might actually be over 50% with the first shot here in Colorado for adults. So this reality is coming soon. So be ready.
Awesome.
Good stuff. Well, as always, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, go check us out, HRV.com. If you haven't downloaded the book, you might look at the subtitle and say, oh, this is for helping healing organizations. Pick it up, because everything we're talking about, very well described in there. We go into a lot of detail. There may be probably a few chapters you might want to skip, though, with all of our mental health struggling right now. Probably not bad to read those more on trauma and mental health chapters too. So when we wrote this, I wasn't necessarily thinking this would apply to everybody, but I think more than ever, it probably applies to a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So also you can check out show notes, and please send us comments, show suggestions, everything else. Again, optimalhrv.com.